Hello there, welcome back to the booth here at Pro Tour Guilds of Ravnica. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe, that's Eduardo Sajgalik. Thanks so much for joining us. Our coverage of Standard here on day number 1 down in the feature match area. We've got a PT champ, Jérémy Dezani. He is sitting at a cool 7-0. His opponent, of course, also 7-0. That is Romolo Disconzi from Brazil in his 5th Pro Tour ever. So a relative newcomer, at least when you compare him to Jérémy Dezani. The players are ready. Let's see who's going to remain undefeated here on day 1 here from Atlanta. Hello and welcome back to coverage here in Atlanta, Georgia. We're covering Pro Tour Guilds of Ravnica. Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Eduardo Sajgalik, and it is our pleasure to bring you coverage of round number 8. We are in Standard. Down in the feature match area, we've got 2 undefeated players. There ain't that many left in the field. This is one of them, Jérémy Dezani from France. He's playing Boros Aggro for Team Hareruya Sword. Sitting across from him, I mentioned in the intro, though, this is only Romolo's 5th Pro Tour ever. Romolo Disconzi from Brazil. He's on mono red aggro. He's at 7-0. And when you look at the deck list here, Eduardo, the first thing that stood out to me was 4 Experimental Frenzy in the main here for Romolo. He knows what's up.
Yep. He knows what's up. After what we've seen in the feature match, that's been really maybe not the card of the day, but it's just like every time this player is out, oh, they have Experimental Frenzy, they catch up.
Oh, why can't it be card of the day? I have it as card of the day.
Okay.
Yeah, let's get it.
I have zero say in this, to be fair, so you don't have to listen to me there. But
well, no, hold on a minute. There's no this is just us making this stuff up. You know, we can do whatever card of the day we want. You can say Time Walk, and I'll be like, yeah, sure, he said it.
Yeah, that's
How
fair.
about we go with Experimental Frenzy?
Yeah, it's been good.
It's been absolutely dominant every single time we've seen it. Primarily out of the sideboard is where it's really come from, but here in the main deck for Romolo with a very low curve red aggro deck, and you can see a bit of a brick wall here for his Fanatical Firebrands. Hunted Witness comes down and says, stop right there.
I'm going to show you 2 things to tell you how this match may play out.
Okay.
First thing is look at those 1/1s.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing is look at Romolo's hand.
Oh my God, 2 Goblin Chain Whirlers. Get ready to kiss them goodbye. By the way, that Instigator does come with a friend. There it is. Is there land number 3, though?
Yeah.
That's the question, because looking at Disconzi's hand, I see, well, a lot of action, but oh, there's a mountain that he just drew off the top, though, so we're good.
Perfect. And again, the deck that Jeremy's playing is meant to kind of win in these white mirrors, and it's performed well so far. But the mono red deck takes advantage. You know, Hunted Witness and Goblin Instigator are perfect in the mirrors. Having a bunch of bodies is great, but it's very weak to the card Goblin Chain Whirler. And you can see that in effect here. Jérémy having to play out these cards, you know, like it's not like you can leave them in hand or anything. You kind of have to cast them on curve. But yeah, down to a single lowly lifelink soldier. At least the Hunted Witness remains okay, but here, no attack plus the soldier kind of tells Jérémy the whole story of what might be up.
Perhaps another one is going to be in his future, and we happen to know that that's the case there. And it looks like Jérémy's going to try to go on the defensive the best he can. He's going to play Conclave Tribunal. That also included tapping that soldier there. So even if it were to die, at least he got something out of it before it exited. Curious to see how Disconzi proceeds. Well, just keep it simple. Just play another Goblin Chain Whirler. That's going to clear the way for 2 damage, knocking Dezani down to 15. And boy, Jérémy has his work cut out for him in this matchup, I'll tell you that. Land number 4 as well, and 2 copies of Wizard's Lightning in his hand.
Yeah, just
about the only good news for Jérémy.
Yeah, I mean, Wizard's Lightning is not a worrisome card, as you mentioned, for the Boros aggro deck since you're going wide. So hopefully with these 2 Chain Whirlers gone, Jérémy is going to try to rebuild the board and try to take control. But Heroic
Reinforcements, your move? That isn't where you want to be. That's supposed to be the big finish that ends the game for Dezani. Instead, he just paid a cool 4 mana for 2 1/1s here in Standard. That is not the way to win.
I mean, in Limited, that card sounds terrible to me already.
Yeah, you're right. That's actually not even up to par in Limited.
But here, Jérémy's at 13. That's already a lot of damage in Romolo's hand. This attack looks safe, but I mean, we're not far from lethal
3,
damage
6, 9, 12. Like just from his hand plus that attack.
Plus the fanatical firebrand. I mean,
13.
it's just a
14.
question of mana at a time.
That's right. So Jérémy Dezani either needs to swing the game in his direction in a meaningful way or find a way to gain some life or this thing's over. And
Okay.
Hunted Witness is not the answer to that particular question. Does he have any other way to make this work? Let's take a look at what he's working with. Oof, 2 pump spells with Pride of Conquerors, and he doesn't currently have a lifelinker on the battlefield. It's going to make it very difficult.
Yeah, it doesn't even have a send. Pride of the Conquerors is fine, but when you don't have a send, like, you're in trouble.
Right.
And here Romolo can draw one of infinite cards, land, Fiashino, Pyromancer. There's not really many ways for Jérémy to take down this game. I think we're just going to see Romolo draw the card. It's probably going to be good enough to take the game down.
Yeah, this could be a quick match. This is not the time to go. And look at this. Upstairs, but wait, there's more. Upstairs again, and sacrifice the fanatical firebrand. 3, 6 plus 1 is 7, and that is game number 1 going to Romolo Disconzi in impressive fashion, leveraging the raw power of a card we saw a lot last season, Goblin Chain Whirler. It seems to have kind of found a little bit narrower spot in the metagame, but you can see that sometimes it still shines in the way that it used to. And off the power of 2 of those, he's going to win game number 1 and move one step closer to being undefeated here on day 1 from Atlanta. We're going to take a short commercial break. When we come back, we'll have the conclusion of that match and much more. Don't go anywhere.
Looking for a place to hang out and play Magic? Head to your local game store this and every Friday to play Friday Night Magic events. Get more info at magic.wizards.com/FNM.
And welcome back to the feature match here in Atlanta, Georgia. Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Eduardo Sajgalik. We're bringing you round 8 coverage. We're playing standard here in Atlanta. And, well, we've got 2 undefeated players in the feature match area on our front table. There's a few more, though. There's Wilson Mock and Taejun Hao. They're both sitting also at 7-0. And then you can see on our other tables, we've got Mark Jacobson with Demir Control facing off against Luis Scott Vargas. And Paul Rietzel is facing off against Gregor Kowalski as well. And those players, well, they're at 5-2. So still a solid start, especially with the win here, but not quite at the rarefied air of the X and O's and the X and 1s right now.
Yeah, usually 6-2 is a really good day 1 record. 5-3, you start like having more of a, I had a good weekend.
It was a good one. I got to see my
nice,
friends.
pleasant weekend. Not, oh, wow, this was great.
Yeah. By way of updates, Mark Jacobson just won game 1 against Luis Scott Vargas, and Tae Jun Hao is up a game over Wilson Mock on their match as well. All right, looks like our main match is now examining their opening hands.
And if you want a sign of how bad this matchup is, Jérémy is forced to keep Sky Marcher Aspirant against a deck with Goblin Chainwhirler just because you need that massive critical 1-drops. That is not a card. If you could board that card out and go into another plan, that is probably a card that would come out, unless it's the best 1-drop left. But yeah, it just showcases that this white deck is looking to beat certain decks in the metagame, which is very typical of any team with Li Shitian, as has been said. You know, he was on the Hall of Fame interview and mentioned he beats the metagame, but this is not the right matchup.
Okay, well, there it is. Sky Marcher Aspirant to kick things off. And right away, it's just going to die, as Disconzi has a lot of different ways to deal with 1-toughness creatures. We saw, you know, kind of the highlight of his deck is Goblin Chainwhirler, but the Fanatical Firebrand is a fine 1-mana way to just take out that threat and not have to deal with it.
Yeah, and looking at Romolo's hand, it's someone with a plan. We're going to kill everything, and then we're going to get some phoenixes to fly over.
That's right, and this is also the type of hand that you could see going down the line, you know, where Experimental Frenzy could take over. He could deploy both phoenixes and have the last card out of his hand just be a frenzy, though. As it stands, he's only on 2 mountains.
But Jérémy on free planes, not exactly deploying anything, and not known for the deck that has a lot of flash threats.
No.
Maybe...
Disconzi deciding if he wants to send in. He does. Down to 18. And there's a land now for Romolo. What can he do? Well, play a Gitu Lava Runner and just ship the turn back.
Yep, keep that Wizard's Lightning. An interesting piece of sideboarding technology with that Tocatli Honor Guard. Essentially a pre-answer to Goblin Chainwhirler. But I think... I'm trying to look at Jérémy's hand. There's a really interesting gold card there.
What is he working with here? What did Jérémy bring in?
One of them would be not so great, which is Heroic Reinforcement. But if that's Aurelia, Exemplar of Justice.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Spicy little 1-of in his sideboard here.
Yeah, and a little 2-of in the main deck. So I think, though, it looks probably like a Heroic Reinforcements since it would have Aurelia here would have been quite powerful. But yeah.
And look at this. How about he's going to protect his Tocatli Honor Guard?
Just +1/+1.
Yep.
That's good. I only need 1 toughness. You know, like it looks like the least value that a Pride of Conquerors has ever given, and yet it just showcases how important this Honor Guard is.
It really is. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with that, right? It's a 1-for-1. It's similar to the plays that Romolo's been making this whole time. So he does get to keep the Honor Guard around, which, as you mentioned, can do quite a bit of work against quite a bit of cards, actually. It's really shown its power.
Yeah.
He has 4 in the sideboard, does Jérémy Dezani, so
yeah.
Really wanted to shore up at least a few problematic cards. You know, the most one that we saw in Game 1, of course, was the Chainwhirler.
Yeah, and Dezani with that Aurelia and a Conclave Tribunal to deal with 1 Phoenix, but Romolo has 2. So this is a much more difficult situation here. With just 1 Phoenix, Romolo would have probably been in trouble since Jérémy would have been able to just play a Conclave Tribunal, Aurelia, and take over. But with 2 Phoenixes, both creatures are going to kind of bounce off each other for a bit until one of the players can draw a better spell. By the way, this attack is great. It's a free attack, right? Like
yeah, he's like, look, if you want to protect this thing that badly, I'll send in.
Right. So Jérémy here considering how bad because here Romolo could essentially play something like a Shock, a Wizard's Lightning, a Lightning Strike to Jérémy, and then ping off the Honor Guard with the Firebrand, but that's still a card. So Jérémy going, you know what? I don't want to take random damage here. I'm just going to block. I think that I want you to tap out. And yeah, Romolo obviously just playing the Phoenix.
Right. Going to play the Phoenix. And the assumption that we have here is that that's going to get gobbled up by a Conclave Tribunal.
Yeah, by the way, I really like that heads-up play from Jérémy. Deciding, like, that point of damage when you're at 18 doesn't seem like much, but all this random damage adds up. I mean, earlier at round 6, we saw Kaibut give a Temple Garden that was 2 life. Didn't seem like much at the time, and it ended up costing the match for Seth, that 2 life. Yep, Conclave Tribunal.
All right, so that's going to take care of the Phoenix. A very clean answer, one that we didn't have prior. to Guilds of Ravnica.
Oh, and there's the card.
Don't say it. Did he really just draw it?
Yep. But
Experimental Frenzy?
We're going to deploy
Oh my
Phoenix
God.
first, though.
I even said this. I said he could play both Phoenixes, and then it would be nice to curve into the Frenzy, and he actually just drew it. Wow.
Yeah.
Romolo Disconzi kind of putting on a show for us here. And if this gets to keep happening, this is going to be way out of hand. And boy, I've gotten a chance to see this firsthand, both in the booth and in the feature match area. And Experimental Frenzy is the truth when it comes to these cheap aggro decks that can really run off 3 or 4 spells if they hit a patch of spells.
Right, and a lot of these white-red decks have been playing Experimental Frenzy as their go big card. Jérémy deciding to play Aurelia, Exemplar of Justice in that slot, essentially as an alternative route. Preferring a way to deal with sweepers proactively rather than necessarily going for the 4 Experimental Frenzy plan that other decks of that class have done. And that's a Fiery Cannonade. You can kind of see this plan in action, right? There's Aurelia, Exemplar of Justice, took my apologies there.
The Tocatli.
Honor Guard, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Fiery Cannonade was a card boarded in. It does absolutely nothing here. Actually, it kills more of Romolo's board.
Yeah, that does not look like the type of card that he wants in this position. So we may see him just go for the Experimental Frenzy instead. I mean, if it's going to get stuck in his hand, it doesn't do anything anyway.
Right. So play Frenzy.
Hit a land?
A land's pretty big. It just allows you more spells down the road. So
Right. And since he can't cast anything off the top of the library right now anyway, a land would be kind of perfect.
Yeah.
Although it looks like he's just going to pass the turn back here.
yeah, and if you're Jérémy and drew that conclave, wait, I was
think
going to call that Conclave Tribunal.
I think he just drew a Conclave Tribunal.
Yeah, so if you're Jérémy and we're going to top tag that Conclave Tribunal, I was going to talk about a lineup play in case he drew it.
And he just did.
What do you get? Do you get the Phoenix or the Frenzy here?
What kind of power do we wield here? We've just called both of their draws here.
What else can we call? I mean, what kind of food would I like tonight? That would be sweet.
Oh, now you're talking business.
Yes. Apparently we need to summon tacos. That was
Tacos is the...
yeah.
Okay.
All right. I think Jérémy said there is like, yep, that summarizes that matchup. But no, this is honestly a really tough spot. Jérémy can deploy a card plus the Conclave Tribunal, but it's not obvious what to get. And the answer to that question may be Experimental Frenzy. I think Jérémy can be in a spot to beat Rekindling Phoenix, but I don't think he can beat the card Experimental Frenzy.
I don't think so either, especially with letting Romolo untap, because right now he got nothing off of it, right? He just saw a card, put it back. It was 4 mana. That was it. And I just would feel so scared at the prospect of letting Romolo untap with that and just go to town.
Yeah, and like Gitu Lava Runner, perfect example of a card that off Frenzy would be a real problem, but drawn naturally, that's pretty meek.
Now, what happens here for Romolo? Does he still attack with the Phoenix into Aurelia and then try to leverage Fiery Cannonade or something like that?
The issue...
How does this work out?
The problem with attacking with Phoenix here is Jérémy is... I mean, there's an on-board trick, right? The Fanatical Firebrand survives Cannonade too, which is a little sweet little interaction, by the way.
Because it's a pirate.
Right, but Jérémy sees the Fanatical Firebrand. So if you block, you're already losing your Aurelia to this card. So clearly you're not going to block. So at that point, the Fiery Cannonade doesn't get the surprise value because there's an onboard trick. I mean, there is a line of thinking where Romolo could essentially use the Fanatical Firebrand for something of little value, apparently, to try to get Jérémy to block with Aurelia. But with Jérémy being at 18 life, taking a hit and re-swinging with Aurelia plus a mentor trigger, that would incentivize Jérémy to just take the damage and then swing back for a ton of damage. So that's why you're not seeing Romolo attack or try to use that Firebrand. I think here Jérémy is starting to very slowly turn the corner.
Yeah, we see History of Benalia from Jérémy Dezani, which is going to add to his board and create quite an attack step in a couple of turns. And the top decks for Romolo, well, they haven't actually been that good. He's got Gitu Lava Runner, and he still has that Cannonade in his hand.
Yeah, I mean, the Cannonade's gotten better. Now with history, it's a very clean answer to History of Benali, but that was Lava Coil off the top for Jérémy Dezani.
Ooh, perfect answer for that Phoenix.
Essentially killing the Phoenix here. However, what we might see this turn, I don't think Jérémy will attack with the Honor Guards here. That would be quite a strange attack. But I think we're going to see...
If he does, he'd be punished for that, wouldn't he?
Well, yeah, of course.
Because of the cannonade?
Right. But we might see one of the Honor Guards come in to flip that Legion's Landing. Jérémy is incentivized, transforming Legion's Landing into Adanto the First Fort. That's long-term advantage. Lifelinkers, that's very important. But yeah, this Lava Coil is going to mean that Jérémy is going to take over this game. And I think that Lava Coil draw really is pushing Jérémy ahead. Even the Fiery Cannonade might clear a lot of this board, but with Adanto the First Fort, Aurelia, Exemplar of Justice, and I think one of both Honor Guards will go, but just those two cards are already enough to take over. Plus, there's a Legion War Boss in Jérémy's hand. Although Jérémy decided to go for War Boss first here, and that's actually going to play into Romolo's Fiery Cannonade rather than deploying the Lava Coil in this spot. Jérémy decided to go for a War Boss, and that's going to play into the Cannonade, giving Romolo more value out of that card.
Yeah, his patience here. No real targets for it thus far, and that worked out quite well for him, as he's going to get both Knights plus the War Boss.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and here there's a decision for Romolo to use the Firebrand to trade with an Honor Guard, but that was declined. Probably, I would have been tempted to take that trade just to make sure that this Adanto the First Fort doesn't appear. But yeah, again, oh my gosh, no. No. You see it.
Finds another experimental frenzy on top of the library.
Yeah, and between that Legion War Boss running the Fiery Cannonade, rather than playing the Lava Coil for damage in the air, plus Experimental Frenzy being top deck, I'd say Romolo's got this game swung back the other way.
We'll know more next turn, right? When we'll see if he just goes off and has one of those crazy frenzy turns, or if it's a double lands and Jérémy Dezani gets to keep on playing.
Yeah. Here for sure, we're gonna see Lava Coil on Rekindling Phoenix. That's gonna go. And now there's gonna be a really nice attack. Aurelia Exemplar of Justice can mentor onto one of these Honor Guards, plus the other one will flip the Legion's Landing into Adanto the First Fort. And Jérémy can play Hunted Witness, I guess.
Interesting line of play from the prior turn that chat points out as well is if Jérémy Dezani had gone for that Lava Coil, Romolo could use the combination of his Firebrand plus the Cannonade to kill his own Phoenix so it doesn't get exiled, make an egg, and then have it come back.
That's true.
Yeah, kind of a cool line.
So actually, if Jérémy thought of that line, that would have been extremely next level.
I'm feeling like giving him credit for it.
That would have been incredible if that was Jérémy's line. But then Jérémy ran the Legion War Boss. So, if that was Jérémy's line, I want to give him maximum credit. That would be incredible. Like being able to spot that in advance. That's, yeah, for sure.
And wah-wah. Hunted Witness to kind of finish things up. But here we go. Is this going to be one of those turns for Romolo? He plays a mountain. Does he have a play? If it's a land, if it's another frenzy, not so great. And anything else, he's happy.
Yeah. I want to point out one of my favorite, I think Kowalski did this, play the land reversed to say that you've made a land drop, which is important with Frenzy where the turns can actually get pretty long. But yeah, here the Aurelia has a lot of text. One of those lines was Mentor, so unfortunately it doesn't appear to have happened here. But that can happen easily, like when you've played 7 rounds of Magic of complicated Magic in a very long day.
Okay, it looks like it was Wizard's Lightning for just 1 mana.
Yep, K2 Lava Runner Wizard, and now Romolo deciding whether to kill the trying to hope to get a key card to kill Aurelia. Did not occur. Yeah, and this game got a lot closer. I mean, that was a lot of back and forth between the different draws.
Romolo seems to have paused a bit here as he looked at his card, put it back, and passed the turn back to Dezani.
Yeah, and here this is a little more difficult for Dezani since obviously a burn spell would have been played on Aurelia. You don't start with Wizard's Lightning and then have a shock or something and then not kill it. So there's not going to be really a surprise burn spell. At that point, what would you be worried about? And the answer is nothing. So you're just assuming the top is a blank and attack accordingly. But yeah, Aurelia, I think at this point it's no longer... It's fine. I mean, it is a long day in. Yeah. And this game's going to really come down as to whether Romolo can draw enough burn spells to kill Aurelia. But yeah, Experimental Frenzy to start is not the best.
And by the way, when you said it's a long day, you were referring to the fact that Jérémy Dezani didn't mentor onto something?
Right, and twice. Okay. So forgot that Aurelia had mentor. At this point, it's not really a missed trigger. It's just forgot that the card had this ability.
Right.
That's like something else. That's not like a one-time. And Jérémy knows that Aurelia has mentor.
Of course, if you asked him, he would say that, but he's so into this game that he seems to have overlooked it a couple of times here. Jérémy gets to make a 1/1 lifelinking vampire, and is he just creeping ahead here? It's been a couple of not super explosive turns for Romolo there. Even with the Frenzy, he ran into a pair of lands, and now he's ran into another copy of Experimental Frenzy, and that kind of slowed things down, even though he did hit a Runaway Steam Kit.
It's a really close game. There's only a 1-2 on the other side of the field, so the Runaway Steamkin is not exactly a good blocker right now. So Jérémy pumping the Aurelia up to 4 power is already putting Romolo down to a very low life total. So I kind of like Jérémy just kind of swinging in with everything, putting Romolo down to, well, 3. Potentially 4 if Romolo blocks a creature that, let's say the Honor Guard with a Firebrand and then kills one of the Lifelinkers. But yeah, as long as Jérémy's boosting the Aurelia, which seems to be the case since it has Vigilance.
Yeah, he did target itself, but looks like no counter once again. So I think he's just going to... I don't think he's going to remember this game, right?
No.
There's something about that where... I don't know. This happened to me before, too, where you're just like, oh, I did... this is the whole half of the reason I put a card in a deck, and I'll forget what it does.
Yeah,
this is round 8 here on day 1 as well. We have had quite a day. Drafted in the morning, played Standard after that, and Jérémy Dezani, though, looking to finish off Romolo Disconzi here in game number 2 and force a game 3 decider on who's going to be undefeated. And it looks like he's in a very good position to do so. Romolo really trying to lean on the power of Experimental Frenzy, but there's only certain cards. All right, here's stage 1. He's got a shock, but he's going to need to chain this into a Wizard's Lightning or something similar. Let's see if he's got it.
Yeah, Romolo the Lava Runner was never going to die because it was going to be 2 toughness versus a bunch of 1 freeze.
Okay, it's another Lava Runner, so that's not it, but it does clear the top of his library for another shot.
But yeah, here it really depends. The second land would kind of spell game over for Romolo.
Yeah, if this is a land, it's just done.
If with a burn spell, with a land, we go to game 3. With a burn spell, we have Romolo taking down Aurelia, and then it's going to be hard for Jérémy to take over from the power of this. But that's
wow! The Experimental Frenzies really let him down that game. He got to untap with it for 3 turns in a row, and never really had one of those chains, one of those sequences where he got, say, a land and 3 spells off of it or something like that. It just never came together.
Right, and the fact that Jérémy had the Conclave Tribunal for that first Frenzy was key. That was a really key draw from Jérémy to Tribunal away that Frenzy, make sure that Romolo couldn't take over, because if that first Frenzy had an untapped step, that would have been more than enough to take over.
And by the way, just to recap that last sequence, I see some people were having were a little confused. He looked at the top card during his upkeep. You can look anytime you want. It was a shock. He cast it. Then he looked at the next card and said, okay, I'm going to draw my card for the turn because it wasn't another instant.
Sure.
And then he continued from there. So that's why he drew a card kind of in the middle of that.
Right. The shock otherwise would have no value in the hand, so you might as well cast it here for free.
Wow, chat really bringing the heat here. They've decided that this is a failed experiment.
That's fair enough. But it's been so successful the other times that it has to have a failure rate at some point.
All right, sounds like we're going to get a live look in here. back on our table.
Oh,
our back table is what I
about
meant
this
to say.
successful experiment?
Gregor Skowalski brewing up a little experiment of his own. And what is he facing now? He's got Benalish Marshal and a Healer's Hawk. And is that a Druid of the Cowl with some counters on it or something? What is that over there?
Yeah. It's a free 5 big Llanowar elf.
Okay, big Llanowar elf.
Well, Druid of big. It's fine. We understand. It adds mana and it's big. However, again, experimental frenzy from Kowalski.
Is that there's a Vivian Reed in hand for Rietzel.
Yeah, that's going to. I think Paul has to answer this experimental frenzy. I don't.
Right.
I don't think you can leave more time. So we're probably going to need to see Vivian Reed minus on frenzy, and then passing the turn here. Unfortunately, Vivian Reed will die. Benalish Marshal plus Healer Hawk, tack teaming it down, but I think this is a necessary solution here. There's a certain irony to Vivian dying to a flyer.
Yeah, it kind of is. She's got this bow and arrow. It's at the ready, but no, it wasn't to be.
Unfortunately, this tiny hawk got her.
If you look at the graveyard, by the way, for Paul Rietzel, you'll see how the Druid got to such a size. It was Finality, in this case, Finality, which swept the board and left behind a blocker.
Yeah, Finality, it's expensive, but it's one of the key cards. It's surprising how it really made this Golgari mid-range deck exist, but yeah, this Doom Whisperer. We've seen this again and again. Experimental Frenzy versus Doom Whisperer seems to be the dual deck of the tournament.
It kind of is.
It's a very weird dual deck.
And once again, we see Doom Whisperer on full-on blocking duty. The only times we've seen it are here in Golgari and also in Dimir, where it comes down and says, all right, no more attacking. And it does a good job of that. And then, of course, once you feel like you have control with either deck, it turns sideways quite nicely as well. We just haven't actually seen much of that today.
Yeah, and this is really awkward for Kowalski here. Basically, how do you attack here? There's a free 5 and a 6/6. If you attack, you're dealing like 4 damage and putting... I mean, you're putting Paul to 4, which isn't... Which might be relevant if your deck contained...
Well, he has a Danto the First for it already on the battlefield, so that thing pumps out 2/2s. Now, the problem is that he would lose the Benalish Marshal in that exchange. So we're talking burn spells here at some point.
Yeah, some Banefire off the top style.
Yeah, which, by the way, Gregor's does have access to. We saw that last or 2 rounds ago.
Top deck did already. Well, yeah, I mean, Frenzy did already, I guess.
There you go.
He was in a hurry to get it the right top deck.
Yeah, it was for lethal, too. That's a Johnny's Pridemate hitting the battlefield now for Kowalski.
Yeah, now this makes this attack a tiny bit better since you'd have a 4/4. Wow, Kowalski deciding, I want to put Paul Rietzel down to 4.
Team.
I mean, Kowalski will likely pay 4 for this Adanto Vanguard and try to have the same number of attackers the next turn. This is a really risky attack, but I could see it paying off. If Kowalski believes that Paul doesn't have any creatures in hand, I mean, Kowalski here with this attack would go to 18 and pay 4, so staying at 14 essentially.
Yeah, Rietzel's exploring the option on if he can afford to block the Healer's Hawk. Technically, he can. He would survive this particular attack, but he'd be facing down the 2 remaining creatures plus the Pridemate plus another creature. So it is a tall order to say the least, and he's decided that he can't do so.
Right, so this block makes sense. We'll see Kowalski pay 4. And then Paul will go to 4. Yeah.
That happens. So
Interestingly, Gregos gains the 4 right back again here.
Yep. Yep.
Just a little loan.
Yeah. I'll pay now. I'll return the favor later.
Yeah, that's right. But interestingly, on top of all that, Gregor says, and look, I've got an Ajani's Pridemate as well, so a couple of counters pop onto that thing too.
Yeah, and with the extra creature coming, there's a few top decks. You know, the Benalish Marshal would kind of do the trick. That Banefire we've been mentioning, of course, would be incredible if that card was boarded in. Something like an Aurelia Exemplar of Justice. There's a lot of different little cards that can, Pride of Conquerors, that also works. There's a few top decks.
Ooh, look at this.
Attacking.
An attack. There's 4 mana.
Ritual of Soot.
Oh, Ritual of Soot from Paul Rietzel. He slams it on the table and says, all of them. Now, this will cost Gregor's 4 life to keep his one remaining creature, the Odonto Vanguard. And look at this. Rietzel even has the backup plan.
This is
very
down to
nice
removal.
blocker.
It's down to top decking a removal spell.
Does he find it? Some way to get that Brontodon out of the way. Just shove it aside for a turn and he can win.
Just please move aside, sir.
Yeah, please move aside. Wow, Ritual of Soot with the Crusher.
Yeah, this is very... What did Kowalski draw? I mean, a Banefire would be it. And obviously a blank would be the end of the game. So are we in some... I think there's one card that kind of hits a partial outcome, which would be something like Aurelia Exemplar of Justice. I don't really see many other cards. Paul Rietzel being tapped out means that something like a Baffling End wouldn't work. A Baffling End would have been kind of funny because Paul with mana would have been able to kill it with the Brontodon and get a free.
So a slight downgrade.
Yeah. But yeah, Kowalski.
So this is Kowalski just sort of desperation trying to gain some life here. But right now, that Doom Whisperer is lethal. Oh, and look at this. He goes to 5, but wait a minute. He blocks, goes up to 6, then takes 5. It would put him to 1.
Right. So Kowalski's
close.
Paul... Why is Paul's ahead in his hands? He's so far ahead. But obviously he wants to take it down. But
Paul's always like that.
Oh, fair enough.
Have you ever seen him watch sports?
I can imagine.
Absolutely.
Here...
He also has options on Doom Whisperer. If he wants to live very dangerously, he could pay 2 life to surveil.
Oh, that's what... Yeah. Well, okay. So...
Do you surveil here, Eduardo?
Okay, let's see.
I mean, you probably don't know his list as well as he does. But
I'm going to think about this. So Kowalski will have free creatures. That's an Addend to the First Fort, kind of hidden in the lands. So that Thrashing Brontodon doesn't really have a good attack. It's really a blocker. So at that point, you're with Doom Whisperer.
But it is a forced block with the Doom Whisperer.
Right.
Right? I mean, he attacks and the Hawk has to jump in front.
And Rietzel decides to go for it. I think... Oh, got the card.
Oh, and look at this. He found Vraska's Contempt. He says, I'm going to go down to 2. Let's see if we can't get the job done. And Healer's Hawk gets exiled. Doom Whisperer attacks. And that is the match going to the Hall of Famer, Paul Rietzel, putting on a masterclass here. Now, his record is 6-2 coming out of day 1 here. So very respectable record. And with a good run tomorrow, has to be a good run, don't get me wrong, but with a good run tomorrow, Paul Rietzel could find himself in yet another top 8. Okay, one more match to go. Down in the feature match area, we've got Jérémy Dezani. That's our main table, playing up against Romolo Disconzi, and they are underway. Romolo felt like he had the tools to win game number 2, but it just didn't quite come together for him with those experimental frenzies, and we'll see if he can do a little better here. He's on the play with his mono red deck.
Yeah, being on the play is quite advantageous, especially if Romolo can draw those 4 lands. Post-board, these red decks really want more mana with Rekindling Phoenix and Experimental Frenzy. But you do play a longer game. Usually post-board, people have more answers, so those cards also do get better.
A pair of Gitu Lava Runners kicks things off for Romolo, and he passes the turn back to Jérémy. Jérémy, nothing yet.
It seems like Jérémy has a Tocatli Honor Guard in hand, so there we go. That'll prevent a Goblin Chain Whirler. And Romolo has access to this. Now, the Lava Runner doesn't seem to be in hand. It seems to have been played. But access to Shock, Lightning Strike. Oh, this is going to be an interesting line.
Is he just going to go upstairs and untap and Lightning Strike away the Honor Guard? Because he also can just play the Chain Whirler. Like, you don't get the trigger, but you still get to play it.
Right, it's still like a free first strike.
Yeah.
It's totally fine.
Looks fine to me.
Yeah, you could Lightning Strike the Honor Guard here, but...
He shocked, and now he's just going to Lightning Strike it away.
Yeah, and this means an attack for 4.
That's right. There's now 2 instants in the graveyard, so the Lava Runners are pumped up by a power each. And you got to like this because a lot of the ways that Jérémy can get back into this is with some type of tokens, and then he can just windmill slam the the Chain Whirler.
I'm maybe not the biggest fan of this. I understand that like damage needs to be dealt, so maybe Romolo went for the maybe that's the thing. Actually, looking back at it, Romolo doesn't really have many with those cards. There's not many lines for Romolo to win, barring top decks, and this does deal damage. The problem is something like a History of Benalia is a real problem.
Right. He has no answers to it right now. He does have the option of starting to attack with his Lava Runners and trade them off for Knights, but boy, that's a tough sell. Unless, of course, if you have a game plan built around Experimental Frenzy, which his deck is built around, but look at his hand. He's got a Chain Whirler and a pair of Mountains. You'd need to find one and soon.
Right, but there's a lot of draws for Romolo to top deck. Jérémy is in a very defensive position, so until Jérémy can put on pressure, there's lots of time to get there. And post-board Chain Whirler is much worse. Game 1, it's an absolute aberration for Jérémy. It's a horror show, but post-board, it's actually okay. You board out a lot of your Instigators and these problem cards. You have Tocatli Honor Guard. You're fine, safe.
Okay, so Jérémy draws his card for the turn. History of Benalia goes to Chapter 2, creating another Knight. The first one already traded off for a full-on card out of Romolo's hand.
I kind of want to reread like the history of Benalia. Could Dezani recap what the first chapter was about? Do you think
he's writing it now?
Yeah, and I think here that's a very easy second history.
And this is some real value that's starting to accrue on the side of Jérémy Dezani. History of Benalia, one of the big pulls to play a deck like this, perhaps one of the most powerful cards in it.
Yeah. Jérémy, by the way, was thinking here of Lava Coiling the Goblin Chain Whirler with being at a very low life total. There was definitely merit to it, but Jérémy understanding, well, I kind of need a board presence. I can't just play Lava Coil and nothing else here.
Draw step for Romolo, not super powerful. Fanatical Firebrand was what he found. This is, of course, one of the downsides to playing a super cheap mono-red aggro deck is that, you get to this stage of the game, and he does have a few good draws. There's many of them that are pretty low impact.
Yeah. And here, Jérémy will probably be interested in trading for this Gitu Lava Runner. And that's part of Romolo's strategies earlier. So earlier I wasn't sure about the plan, but I think Romolo took the right line. Looking back at it and thinking about it, Romolo's cards were not that great in a matchup like this. They were okay, but you're looking for Experimental Frenzy or Rekindling Phoenix, and those cards aren't there. So at that point, you need to value these cards. So I really like the take of Shocking plus Lightning Striking. It's possible that keeping the Shock in hand, I think that's the part where I disconnected, actually. I think you could have Lightning Striked the Honor Guard without having to shock Jérémy in the face. I know it gives Shock more damage, but then killing one of these Knights would have been big game.
Especially now having that option. Yeah. Jérémy Dezani, looking at the double block on the Chain Whirler, looks extraordinarily risky, so he's just going to go for the 2-2 on the 2-2 Lava Runner and make a much safer trade here. He does take an additional damage and leaves a more potent creature as a result, but boy, that could go so wrong if he goes for the double block and just loses both Knights to a shock or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it would be similar to a chump block anyways. First strike gets rid of a 2-2, and then,
right.
Yeah. But here, we're going to... Oh, wait, was that Aurelia Exemplar of Justice? Jérémy was running a little low on fuel, but that would be a big draw.
I didn't see, but we'll find out shortly. Firebrand Land was the play for Disconzi, and he passes the turn back with no cards left in his hand. He has so far got Dezani down to 7 life, but that is quite a bit of work to do from his perspective. And if Aurelia shows up, that's a clock that he's not going to be able to get through very quickly.
I actually wonder here, even though Lava Coil takes your turn, and that seems horrible, the thing is Jérémy is actually pretty ahead and only really losing to specific scenarios. Aurelia is taking over, though, this turn, and Jérémy does want to be mana efficient. This is a lot of damage. The
what
problem
is 4 damage only?
It's 6. Aurelia gives +2 to the creature, and then it's +2/+1 from the history, +2 base. So this is an attack for 6. So we're attacking with a 6-free Vigilant Knight here. But yeah, Jérémy deciding to put the Aurelia. And then the big question for me is, what if Chain Whirler attacks?
So it only gets the +2 if it's red creature, though?
No, I believe that's...
It gains Vigilance if it's white.
I believe it's both. Until end of turn, that creature gets +2/+0. You choose one creature, right?
It says and gains Trample if it's red. Yeah. So he's going to be attacking in for 4, though, and it does get Vigilance off of Aurelia. Now, we will see if...
there was a comma. It is +2. It's okay.
Oh, no,
Six,
explain
seven,
it. No, explain it. Tell me.
Okay. So the way the card is worded is until of return, that creature gets +2/+0.
Okay, no matter what.
Right. And then comma, other things may
Thank you. Okay, good.
Right.
Yeah, I need to open more Mythics Unlimited, apparently. But at any rate, one thing I'm curious to see is if Jérémy remembers Mentor in this game, because all of a sudden he's turned the tides quite strongly here, although it does look like with the Chain Whirler on the battlefield, he won't actually have a clean attack on the ground anyway.
Well, with that Lava Coil in hand and Pride of Conquerors in hand, like Jérémy untapping is pretty much locking the game in his favor. That Hareruya has already dealt some damage, but now we're going to see its power. Lava Coil, Jérémy is just thinking, how do I lose this game? Because Lava Coil is one of the only cards that answers Phoenix, but Jérémy's going to go, you know what? I need to deal a ton of damage. I'm going to Lava Coil this Goblin Chain Whirler rather than using a Pride of Conquerors for it so I can deal more damage here.
Right.
Yeah. Forcing a chump block and understanding that next turn anyways, there's a Romolo top decking a Rekindling Phoenix isn't going to get there. And I think Jérémy's just got this on lockdown. With Romolo, no cards.
It feels like it. Hareruya has been absolutely fantastic. And the crazy part about it is that he still has forgotten that it even has Mentor. Hareruya has
good.
Mentor.
It doesn't need it.
And it just doesn't even matter. Jérémy has been able to just dominate.
That Hareruya has been impressive. And Jérémy looking positioned for an undefeated day one at this Pro Tour.
Is he just showing off at this point?
With
the Mentor? He's like, I don't need it. And that's going to do it. Jérémy Dezani finds the victory, a couple of timely draws, and a draw that fell a little flat for Disconzi. And you know what that means? He's 8-0 on day one here at the Pro Tour. So really great stuff from Jérémy Dezani. Super impressive with this deck.
Yeah, I think that game two was really tight. That was quite that was a really tight game to navigate. Obviously, the Mentor didn't exist. But aside from that, that was a really difficult game to navigate with those multiple experimental frenzies, having to balance when do I get rid of Phoenix, when do I get rid of Frenzy, how do I tempo the game in such a way that I gave myself the best chance. A few bad draws off that Frenzy meant that Jérémy could take over, and here a slightly anemic draw. That's it. Jérémy wins a really rough matchup here, thanks to Hareruya Exemplar of Justice.
That's right. And watch out for tomorrow, everybody, because Jérémy Dezani, 8-0, coming in hot. 3-0's his draft. I actually had a chance to chat with him just briefly about how his draft went, and he said, look, I just drafted my seed and ended up in Boros, but he wasn't trying to force anything. He said sometimes he does, by the way. We had a little discussion. But he said in this case, he's like, look, I just went with the flow of it, and I got a good Boros deck, and I was able to 3-0 with it. And I'll tell you what, when somebody understands the format that well, there's a lot of pressure on that draft tomorrow morning, right?
Oh, yeah.
He knows this deck. He knows his capabilities. He's put in the time. He knows the patterns. He knows what's good, what's bad. But you can't determine what you open up in those packs. And when we come back tomorrow morning for the draft, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Jérémy with such a great record.
Yeah, no, I mean, Jérémy tomorrow is going to wake up and go, I hope this goes well.
Yeah.
You don't get many 8-0s in the field. In the Pro Tour, the history of the Pro Tour, there's not that many. There's roughly 2x as many as, Pro Tour champions. So really great start, and he's going to look to convert that into a second top 8.
Yeah, we'll be keeping an eye on him and, of course, all of our other players at the top tables tomorrow. For now, though, we're going to take a short break before we send it to a wrap-up. We'll see you tomorrow morning from the booth and from the desk in just a minute.
there, welcome back to the News Desk. Maria, Paul, and Rich here, and we have seen some absolutely fantastic Magic today. One of our players, 7-1, is down on the floor with BDM, Mark Jacobson.
Thanks, Maria. I'm here with Grand Prix Mexico City champion Mark Jacobson. Mark, the practice that went into that GP carried over for the Pro Tour for you?
It did. Start today with a nice little 3-0 draft. Since Mexico City, I'd only done one round of one draft, and I just kind of stayed with my instincts and stayed with what I knew.
What did you know? What did your instincts tell you about this draft format?
Some people have success with green, and I actually had a 3-0 green-black deck at the last GP, but my preference is against it, so I had a really key pick in the first pack where I took a Direct Current over a Beast Whisperer and then got past a ton of green-white and just kind of stuck to the red and then the blue, and then ended up with an Izzet deck.
So, how did Beast Whisperer decided I wanted to go Izzet?
Yeah, there was a camaraderie, 2 Sunhome Stalwarts, a Conclave Cavalier, and I was like, oh, there's a Crackling Drake. Let's just do that.
I like it. I like that a lot. Now, let's talk to you about Constructed. What did you end up bringing to the table?
I brought a blue-black mid-range deck. So a few people worked on it. John Rolfe, Hunter Cochran, and Jacob Nagro worked on it with me. And, we've been developing it for maybe a week and a half now, just trying to polish it up. I had seen a blue-black Surveil kind of mid-range control list in the leagues, and it interested me with how the meta was shaping up, but people weren't that interested. And then I think John and Hunter kind of went into the tank to figure out, how can we change this deck in a maybe more proactive way. So we're more mid-range as opposed to controlling, and it's been working out.
I'm looking forward to seeing more of that on camera. You were in the feature match area this round. Big match. You played against Luis Scott Vargas. How did that play out?
Fungal infection and sweepers are good. They helped. Hostage taker good. Game 1 was really weird because I had all the right tools at the beginning and then had just a lot of lands going, and I was really afraid of a heroic reinforcements off the top. So I just played really conservative and tried to make sure I had the game locked up before I went for a kill.
All right, Mark Jacobson, I got a message from Jarvis. I think your table's ready.
Oh, okay.
So he's got a hot meal waiting for him and a hot draft ready for the morning.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, BDM. Well, Paul Chian, you were in the booth for some of the morning. You're watching the rest of the matches, wandering out on the floor. What is your takeaway here from day 1 of the Pro Tour?
Well, one thing that was really exciting to see was just the diversity of the format. We got to see a bunch of aggressive decks. We also saw our control decks as well. But on top of that, I think even in the feature match area, we saw every guild represented. We had a blue-black control deck. We had Selesnya mid-range. We had Golgari. We had Izzet Drakes. And we had Boros Angels. We had every single guild represented at the top tables of this tournament.
What was your personal favorite deck that you saw out there today that you're like, oh, I want to sleeve it up?
There were a lot. There were a lot. I actually haven't really been playing too much. I know it's like the most popular deck, but I don't have that much experience actually playing with the black-green mid-range deck. And I just kind of want to see, I want to try playing the best version of that going into, after the tournament's over.
Well, we started with 510 players, then we got all the way down to just 2 with perfect records. One of our 8-0 players is on the floor now with Brian David Marshall.
Thanks, Rich. I'm here with Singapore's Tae Jun Hao, 8-0. Great job here on day 1. Tell me about how your day went.
And I think I got pretty lucky today. Like, I draw the right cards at the right time and in the right matchups. Yeah, so that's pretty good. Yeah.
Now, you weren't feeling that lucky in Game 3, Round 8. You mulliganed to 4 on the play. What were you thinking about at that moment?
I'm thinking, well, 7-1 is not a bad score. Yeah, like I'll take that and come again tomorrow. And then, I just cast everything I could, and he didn't have the answer for it. And yeah, here I am. Yeah.
That's pretty much how you fantasize about, getting that perfect record. Now, you've made a deep run before, Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan, 2 winning in matches down the stretch to get into the top 8. What have you learned from that experience?
I guess being here makes me very nervous that time, in all the bright lights and everything, and I guess it helps me to learn to keep calm and process things better when in the feature match area. Yeah, I think, and also I did more practice this time. Like, you know, I really drafted a lot this time, you know, just join the moto queues and, you know, and I love this set, this draft. I think it's the set that I drafted the most since I ever played Magic, yeah.
Okay, and, you know, he says get nervous. Those winning in matches, who are they against?
The first one was Reed Duke, and the second one was John Finkel.
Yeah, it's something to get nervous about, but 8-0, in great shape, going into day 2, looking to improve on his finish from Rivals of Ixalan.
Stuff. Congratulations to Tajan Howe, one of your 2 8-0 players. And if we know we've got all the 8-0s, and we know the 7-1s, we know the 6-2s, the 5-3s, and the 4-4s, that means the stage is set for end step.